Welcome to the fourth season of Murder in 20 podcast, where I, Bobby Stevens, am your host with a new episode every Wednesday. If you're a serious fan of true crime and love listening to podcasts, but don't want all that small talk, you've come to the right place. We get right to the facts. Murder in 20 episodes are concise and complete in 20 minutes. Less talk and more true crime. Be sure to like, share, and follow us to learn about upcoming episodes every Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's get to this week's episode. Charles Carr preferred his middle name Alan. By his mid-40s, his career was on an upward trajectory. In the early 1970s, he worked for the Department of Finance, then was named Deputy Minister of the Environment. In the early 1980s, he moved to BC and became the Chief Executive Officer of a hazard waste company. Alan settled into his life in Saanich, a suburb of Victoria, located on the southern tip of Vancouver Island. Alan met Beth Carter, also in her mid-40s. She was highly motivated and consulted for several provincial government ministries and was an instructor at Camosun College. Beth was extremely interested in working on environmental projects, a passion she shared with Alan. Beth and Alan had both been married and divorced. In 1991, the couple moved in together, along with Beth's two sons, aged 7 and 12. The couple were extremely happy together and engaged to be married in September 1992. The sun was shining as the August-long weekend rolled into view. With their nuptials only a month away, the couple were spending the weekend aboard Beth's 44-foot cabin cruiser, called the Bonnie Lass, moored at a marina in nearby Sydney. Tucked into a sheltered bay, it's protected on 3 sides. To the east are the Southern Gulf Islands in Canada, and to the right, the San Juan Islands in the United States. August was warm. The winds along the ocean provided a welcome breeze. The sky a mesmerizing blue sapphire, while the sun danced on the ocean. With the sun on their faces and the gentle sway of the boat against the dock, the couple enjoyed each other's company and shared a glass of wine. On Sunday, August 2nd, Beth and Alan retired to bed in the forward berth below deck. 300 miles northeast from Victoria sits Port Alice, a small village built on a steep mountainside with views of the inlet. This is where Mike Huber Smith was born and spent the first 14 years of his life. He moved to Victoria, where he resided with his father. Unfortunately, he didn't receive much guidance or supervision, and soon was in trouble with the law and incarcerated by the age of 16. Mike drank and used cocaine, LSD, and heroin. Court records revealed that he quickly accumulated a rap sheet for robbery, assault, and escape from custody. By 18, he spent more time in jail than he'd spent out. In 1992, 25-year-old Mike hooked up with his good friend and fellow criminal, who was also named Michael Smith. He went by his middle name Rob. Now, Mike had gained a fair bit of experience breaking into boats, including doing what's called a creeper, the term used when breaking into a boat when people are on board. On the August-long weekend, Mike and Rob cruised around looking for a place to break into. Rob did acid and the two drank. They set their sights on a local business, but when a cab driver showed up, they changed their mind and left. They drove down Rest Haven Drive and onto Harbour Road and ended up at the marina in Sydney. Leaving Mike's car in the parking lot, they quietly crept down the slips until they spotted Beth and Alan's cabin cruiser. Thinking it wasn't occupied, they broke in. As they started to tiptoe around, they heard snoring coming from below and realized they weren't alone. They assumed it was a lone male. Rob motioned to Mike for them to leave. He wanted no part of this. They snuck down the dock and onto a nearby empty sailboat. There they found some beer and cracked open a few cans, inhaled the liquor, and left the crumpled cans on the deck. But not before grabbing a six-pack to go and stealing a cell phone so that Mike could make a call. Leaving the sailboat, they returned to the parking lot. But instead of leaving, Mike suggested to Rob they do a creeper and go back to the boat. Rob was hesitant, but agreed. Breaking in again, they stopped to drink some wine that they'd found in the front cabin. Then Mike announced he was going down below to get the man's wallet. Mike felt around until he found Alan's pants. As he was about to hand them up to Rob, Alan woke up and yelled. Mike was on him in a second and pinned him down, telling him it was a robbery, then forced him to roll over onto his stomach. That's when they heard Beth's voice. Mike and Rob were stunned. Mike told Beth and Alan to shut up, keep quiet, and nobody gets hurt, and ordered them to hide their faces. Then he yelled for Rob to bring him something to tie them up with. Rob handed Mike a long yellow extension cord. Mike ordered Alan to put his hands behind his back. Mike wound the cord around his left wrist 3 times, then swung it over to his other side, around his right elbow, then back around his left elbow. Then he took the long end of the cord and passed it around Alan's waist, up over his back, and wrapped it around Alan's neck 3 times. Using butterfly knots to secure the cord, it was tied in such a way that if Alan struggled, even a little, it would pull the cord down and tighten around his neck. Mike took what was remaining of the long extension cord and wrapped it around Mary in the same fashion. She pleaded with them and said that her purse had money in it. Rob searched, but became frantic when he couldn't find it. Finally, he located it and stole the cash. Beth and Alan were trapped. There was only one exit out of the cabin, and it was blocked. They had no control, no power. Rob told Mike they should leave, but Mike refused. As Mike stayed below, Rob began wiping their fingerprints off the boat. Mike sexually assaulted Beth. Afterwards, she prayed and hoped her prayers would be heard, but they fell on the deaf ears of a psychopath. Mike strangled the couple. Beth died at 45. Alan at 46. Mike then grabbed a red gas can, sloshed gasoline around the boat, and lit a match. He and Rob calmly walked away as the flames licked at their heels. At 5:20 a.m., the volunteer fire department in Sydney responded to a boat fire. They extinguished the flames, the white cabin cruiser now black and tall. When firefighters were finally able to board the boat, they were shocked to find 2 burnt bodies. It was evident to those at the scene that they had been tied up. The boat was now a crime scene and was towed away. Rob and Mike returned to their homes and showered. The next day they headed north towards Lake Cowichan. On the way there, they pulled over to a rest stop and threw the clothes from the night before into a garbage can. At the lake, Rob threw the phone into the water. Investigators soon learned about the sailboat and wondered if there was a connection between this and the fire. 2 days later, police said they were still processing the evidence and investigating to determine if the deaths were foul play or if they died by some other means. There are over 3,000 different knots, so they brought in the only law enforcement officer in North America at the time that was an expert in knot analysis. Then police unexpectedly received a call from one of their informants, Mike Smith, and he told them he had information about a boat fire. Officers met Mike down at the marina and videotaped his statement. He claimed he and Rob met Beth in a bar that night and that she invited them back to the marina and took them to the sailboat. She gave Rob the cell phone to make a call and was coming on to them. Then it was her idea to take the party to the cabin cruiser, that they had consensual relations, and afterwards the three of them were drinking when Alex showed up and freaked out. Mike claimed he wanted nothing to do with the confrontation and left, while Rob stayed behind. He said he waited in the parking lot for Rob for 45 minutes, and when he finally showed up, he told them to follow him back to the boat to see what he'd done. He recounted their trip to Lake Cowichan and getting rid of the evidence, and said that was when Rob told him he'd set fire to the boat. Then he stated Rob threatened him, that if he called police, he'd kill his mother and his brother. Police were skeptical. In an effort to show that he was being helpful, Mike offered to take them to the rest stop along the highway and led them to their discarded clothing. And at the lake, he pointed to the spot Rob had thrown the phone in. Police searched Mike's car, and in the trunk, they found empty beer cans. The serial numbers on those cans were a perfect match to the serial numbers on the beer cans on the sailboat. This evidence corroborated Mike's story that he was there that night. Meanwhile, police had begun looking into the background of their victims and discovered that Beth was not the type of woman to cheat on her fiancé and would never go to the bar to pick up men. They couldn't completely dismiss Mike's statement, but their gut told them he wasn't telling the whole truth. The investigation continued. The pathologist determined Beth and Alan died from asphyxiation, but it wasn't clear yet if they had died before or after the fire. The knot expert determined that the knots were consistent with one person having tied all the knots. When Rob found out Mike had snitched on him, he went to police with his side of the story. He never mentioned Beth being on the sailboat and said that it had been Mike's idea to break into the cabin cruiser and that Mike thought there was only one man on board. He claimed that Mike tied them up with an extension cord using butterfly knots. Then he left the boat for 45 minutes, and when he returned, he realized that Mike was likely killing the couple. He claimed he left for another 30 minutes. When he came back again, Mike was in a dinghy and had returned with a gas can. Rob's version of their trip to Lake Cowichan was the same as Mike's. And Rob seemed sympathetic towards the crime, whereas Mike was not. But there were things that didn't match up. How would he know what kind of knot Mike had used unless he had been there. Just days after their murders, Mike and Rob were arrested. Days later, the carbon monoxide testing was complete and determined that Beth and Alan were dead before the fire. It was now a double homicide. Mike and Rob were charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and breaking and entering. Although investigators believed that Mike was the one who killed the couple, Rob was charged as well for being there during the act and not taking steps to prevent it. DNA taken from Mary was a match to Mike, and in an ironic twist, they found Mary's DNA on Mike's sweatshirt, the one he discarded and led police to. Rob changed his plea to guilty and was sentenced to 20 years. He appealed the length of his sentence, but it was denied. Mike pled guilty and was sentenced to life in prison with no parole for 25 years. While in prison, Mike got an eerie tattoo on his arm of a burning ship. And in 1999, he killed his cellmate by strangling him with an extension cord. Thanks for listening to Murder in 20 with less talk and more true crime. Be sure to tune in next Wednesday for the episode of Becky Stowe. In Niles, Michigan, the train tracks run near Gray Lake. On a warm summer day, Rob took Becky for a walk, each step taking them closer to the lake and a shallow hole he dug the day before. Soon Becky was staring down at her grave. If you're dying to hear more, past episodes of Murder in 20 are available for free at murderin20.com and on all major podcast platforms. We love what we do and are dying to continue. If you enjoy listening to Murder in 20 every week, we'd be eternally grateful for your support by visiting Murder in 20 at Patreon, PayPal, or murderin20.com. We'd like to acknowledge Verbal Planet for use of their music, sound effect from Vaseline Studios and Quick Sounds, and our many editorial sources who are listed on our website. Be sure to like, share, and follow us to learn about upcoming episodes every Wednesday. Stay safe, sleep with the lights on, and don't play with strangers.